Welcome to Scars of Service, where the hidden wounds of duty take center stage. I'm Damon Clark, a combat infantry veteran. I'm joined by Danny Morton, Emergency Medical Services, and Michael Ducote, Law Enforcement and Corrections. Together, we're peeling back the layers of trauma from the front lines, whether it's the battlefield, the ambulance, or the streets. These are the stories of what we've lived through, and the moments that don't end when the shift does, and how they reshape life off duty. Raw, real, unfiltered. We're here to share the scars you can't see, along with the strength and faith it takes to bear them. Let's work through it. Welcome back to Scores of Service. Today we're a little short-handed. Mike and Danny are a little tied up, so I'm going to try to do it solo today, and they should be back for the next episode. Today I'm talking with Daniel Gauthier. Daniel, you want to give everyone a little intro?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Daniel Gauthier. Everyone known me for the last 20 something years, especially in the military, is Peanut or Sergeant Peanut. But retired vet. I just retired 3 years ago. Retired May of 2022. I initially joined on February of 2000. So I had 22 years and some change of service. I've had 3 deployments overseas. I've been through Katrina and multiple other missions down south, South America, helping out with impoverished communities and different things like that with the engineering battalion. So that's just a little bit about me.
So, with your multiple deployments, what would you say would be your most difficult one? Or let's get into Katrina.
Yeah, honestly, man, I would say Katrina was the most life changing event in the military for me. And if it came down to deployments, my first one that I actually did with your brother and then with James Clark. And all of our friends growing up that were in the military with us, you had Josh Constantine, Natalie Constantine. So I thought it was pretty cool that we all be deploying. That was my first deployment. So to know some guys and good friends to go out there with, that was pretty cool. But Katrina in itself was its own experience. I would compare it to a deployment, absolutely. I was a kid, man. I guess, probably 23 years old at the time. And we did multiple weekends before that of going up there for incoming hurricane, different things like that. We'd usually go up to headquarters up in Baton Rouge and be on standby, sit around all weekend, do some just training to keep us busy and stuff like that. Well, the whole Katrina episode that changed the game on everything. Um, so we went up to Baton Rouge and kinda started downloading everything, and they grabbed me and about 20 other guys and said, "Hey, y'all get this truck and load up." And, I was like, "Where are we going?" They said, "Y'all going to New Orleans." And I was like, "Where's the hurricane supposed to hit?" And they're like, "New Orleans." So I was like, "Great." Well, I was a commo guy, so initially my first response was, "Do we need to bring radios and different things like that?" And they're like, "No, get your ass on the truck, get your gear." And I'm like, "We're probably gonna need comms." And they're like, "Just get your stuff, get on the truck." And I was like, "No problem." So we rolled out. We went down to Jackson Barracks where we were supposed to link up with some other units and different things, and we were gonna stage there and wait for the hurricane to pass. And actually, we got there, we've been traveling all day. We got to this chow hall, they told us go inside, get some food, and you've been on the road all day. So we get there and it was chaos as usual. They had multiple units of different people throughout the state. They had active duty units there. So there's a lot of moving parts. And funny thing is, I'll never forget this. Just by coincidence, we get in there, get in line like we were told, trying to get some food. We've been on the road all day. You know, we get in there, and some active duty first sergeant walks up to us, and he starts yelling and screaming at us. And basically, what are we doing? Getting in line in front of his people, which they had a long line. We just got on the end of it. Wouldn't purposely doing anything, trying to run past anyone. So they get into it. We had just gotten assigned this police officer from NOPD, Derek Gray, and he was going to be assigned to us for when we started getting missions, start doing our rescue missions. and he's kind of sitting back watching everything going on, and Jeffrey Carmouche was in charge of us. He was the highest ranking at the time. We were all young bucks and everything. So Jeffrey and the guy start talking, and he's basically just talking down to us. It's the whole active duty, National Guard mentality. You guys don't know you know shit, and
Yeah.
we always prove them wrong in the end.
Yeah. The weekend warrior.
The weekend warriors. There you go. So just by coincidence, we got into a big argument with him, and so the cop told us his name's Derek. We still talk to this day. He's like, "Hey man, why don't you guys just come stay with us? We've got a hotel on the riverfront tonight, NOPD. We got some big conference rooms." He's like, "Why don't you just come stay over there and we'll start missions out of there in the morning?" So we agreed. Instead of going staying in some barracks or whatever, got a hotel to stay in. So we left from there after we got briefed on everything, and we went and start patrolling around the city. And he was just kind of showing us around, showing us the hot spots. When they get hurricanes come in, where they thought were going to be the most affected areas, and basically, the weather was starting to get a little bit worse, just kind of light rain and everything, but you could tell everything was picking up. So we went around the city. We kind of end of the night, we got ready. We went in, and that's when the hurricane started hit. So we rode it out. Right there on the Riverwalk, we were in the Hampton Inn, I think, and this conference room that we were staying in, we had bunks everywhere and all that. And like I said, we were supposed to stay at Jackson Barracks. Well, throughout the night, started getting worse and worse, and windows started blowing out in the hotels, and just had wind coming through. And I'm not lying to you, I don't remember what floor we were on, but I knew it was pretty bad when all of a sudden we had to be on at least the 10th story or above, and all of a sudden I see a dumpster fly by, like a big square
Ooh.
dumpster, just fly through there in front of us. You couldn't see that great outside the windows; it was dark, but I managed to see that. That's when I knew it was serious, and the windows were starting to bust out. The wind was howling through the hotel. We lost power and everything, and I started thinking, I'm like, man, I don't know if we're gonna make it through this.
Yeah. Kind of, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I'd been through hurricanes growing up in Louisiana and everything, but that one had me worried because I'd never been like right on the X marks the spot. It's coming through right here, and it got pretty rough. So morning came, the worst of it was over. It seemed like it. We got outside to try and start lining up Humvees and stuff, get ready for rescue missions. Winds were still like 100 miles an hour or greater. They had a little breezeway on the side. So just to kind of give you an idea, we walked out into the breezeway to go walk into the parking garage, start grabbing our Humvees and everything. And it was like on TV where you're running forward and the wind's pushing you backwards. And it started doing that to several of us. And we had to dive back like into the little area underneath the hotel to get out of the wind so it wouldn't blow us away. But finally the winds died down, and our first mission was go out and get essential personnel. So like they had all of New Orleans was wrecked. They had police officers, firefighters, I'm sure paramedics, everything else. They were trapped in their houses. They're trapped in different communities and stuff. And that was our first mission: go out and start doing rescue missions. And as far as I knew, I'm sure there were other groups that were moving around, but as far as the National Guard, there was a handful of us they sent out their advance party, and we wrote it out ourselves in a hotel. We were the first ones on the ground to start doing missions that next morning. So we leave from there. We're all pumped up because like we get to go do all this cool stuff, do mission, rescue missions and everything. We're engineering battalion. We're used to doing construction work.
Yeah.
We're used to building stuff.
Yeah. Like what you said about the Central America
Right, right,
deployments where go build schools. I
right.
remember my brothers talking about it.
So that's what we were pumped up because we got to do a different type of mission for a change, and it was in our community, in our home. And so we get out there, and I'll never forget. Like I said, I was 23-year-old kid. Up until that point, I had never seen, a person dead up close and personal unless I went to a funeral and seen him in a casket, and that was accepted. You kind of knew what that was. We get outside of the hotel and get maybe a mile down the road, middle of New Orleans. First thing we see, we come up on this guy, and he's laid out in the road. and we just see this big puddle around him, and we seen something laying on the ground, in front of him, and probably about 10 feet away from him. As we get closer, we realize that was his brains on the ground.
Oh,
So we pull up on him, and he'd definitely been shot in the head and killed, and we're like, "Well, that's not from the hurricane." And that was our first experience, breaking out the gate.
yeah.
And New Orleans is known for, its crime and different things. We're some old country boys from Vols Parish. So that kinda woke us up right there that it wasn't gonna be just a smooth ride, and so we get out there and we start doing missions, start trying to rescue whatever people we could. We'd patrol through different neighborhoods. We were in the high water recovery, MTVs. A lot of times the water would be up to the bed of the truck, and we're just going through, man, and trying to see how far in we could get to try and just get people on the truck and get them out of there. And then we had times where the trucks would kill on us in the water. We'd have to sit there and just keep messing with it and finally get it running again and then go back to high ground. But we eventually started pulling in personnel, or we go to the end of a neighborhood where the water was basically where the end of the water was. And we kind of just park right there and either go out in boats or have people coming to us, and we start loading up the trucks. And like I said, the police officer we had, he was assigned to us, and he'd get, just different drop points on the radio. And so basically we load our truck up and bring people in these different drop points, and they would change from day to day, different places in the community in New Orleans. The causeway was a big one for a while. We got to the causeway, and in the middle of all the roundabouts, they had an overpass right over the middle of it. And I remember pulling up the first time, and we were unloading these people, and they had helicopters landing on each one of the off ramps. And it was just thousands and thousands of people as far as you could see. It was all refugees, different, I don't wanna use the word refugees, but it was different people that were displaced. They had no homes left, no
Yeah.
nothing.
Displaced citizens.
Yeah, they survived the hurricane. Half of them didn't have houses anymore. A lot of times they were coming out of the water, coming towards the trucks, and they'd have garbage bags or different things they floated, whatever belongings they could grab. This was everything they had left in their life. And I just looked out as far as I could see. It was just people everywhere. It had news vans all over on top of the overpass. And it really started to kind of set in, how serious of disaster it was going to be.
Yeah.
Well, first couple of days, water had come up and everything. And I don't know, it's kind of water came up, but then it started receding. And the next thing you know, I guess the levee broke after that. That's when the water started rising again. And we'd go back in the afternoon or middle of the night after doing rescue missions all day, go back to that hotel. There was no electricity in there, no water. We couldn't take showers or anything. Well, I remember one day we went to go out to do the missions. They may have been the second or third day, who knows? Um, we go out and there's water in the streets, and I'm like, how's the water coming back up? I thought it was draining. Well, the levees had broke. They flooded out the Ninth Ward, flooded out Jackson Barracks that we were supposed to stay at. Remember, all those guys kind of got stranded and they had to be rescued themselves. And just by coincidence, we were supposed to be staying there ourselves. And because of that fight we got into with that first sergeant, we were still operational. We are still good to go. So we continue running missions. Over the next few weeks, or the next week for sure, as people were stranded on overpasses and roads, and, the elderly people were out there. This is August, September, went into September, but you know how Louisiana summer is.
Yeah.
It's
You're
brutal.
still hitting over 100-degree heat index, 100% humidity.
And the thing is, we
You
get
can
up.
drink the air.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we get up on these overpasses, and so then you're above the water for miles. It might be a stretch, and there's just people all alongside the overpasses. And but where it would drop down on either side coming in or going out was just go into the water. So these people had nowhere to go. And it would go days and days. They didn't have food, they didn't have water, and of course, they were trying to stop the trucks as we were passing them, but we get our missions and say, go to this neighborhood, go to that neighborhood. And eventually it got to where we'd get into these neighborhoods and you'd see people that's passed away, See people floating in the water. You'd see people on the side of the roads, elderly and different things like that, that just after a while, the heat just got to them and they were dehydrated, no food, no water. You just start seeing basically dead bodies alongside the road. And at first, it was a few here and there, and then it turned into a lot, and then it was hundreds. And like I said, up until that point, I had never seen anything like that, man. Uh, Other than going to a funeral home. But it got to the point where we're seeing these people day after day, and you watch Mother Nature do what it does to them, and like an animal on the side of the road, you'd watch it swell up, and you'd watch it do its thing and start decaying, and it got pretty bad. So at first, I was just seeing all that, and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I just kind of took it for what it was. I had this accident, people passed away, but years later, it did affect me, and I didn't realize it 2 years later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, I was on my second tour,
Yeah,
OIF 3, and I think I made the comment to my mom. I'm like, "Wow, that's amazing. My my younger brother's in their National Guard unit is actually getting shot at,
yeah,
attacked more, seeing more action in New Orleans than I am south of Salter City."
yeah. I mean, it got pretty bad. We had some guys go out with we had SWAT team ride with us in the truck with their what's the boats that they got? The Zodiac boats,
Yeah,
airboats and stuff like that. And we'd take the boat out to the edge of the water, drop them off. They go in and out. So we were working with NOPD, we were working with SWAT team, and basically all the chaos, every serious thing you were seeing that was just blowing everybody's minds across the country on the news, we were involved in pretty much all of those different things. Rest of our rest of our support, our unit, everybody was still cut off from the city, so they were still sitting in Baton Rouge. Although the roadways into New Orleans were cut off, so then we lost comm. We didn't have any radios. None of the phones worked. We didn't have any supplies. We had no food. We had no water. We just kind of were cowboying it up, just figuring out as we went. But we were trying to do our mission as best we could. We had many, many people were putting in on the trucks and getting them to safety and getting them sent out. But part of that process, like I said, as the days went on, you had lots and lots of people that was starting to affect them. And we had plenty of people die on the trucks, before we can get them to the drop zone. There's one old guy in particular, and I still remember him to this day. He kept looking over at me, and I could tell like he was fading in and out. And I talked to one of the guys that was in charge with us on the truck, and at this point, we had one little case of water in the back of the truck with us, and we kind of covered it up with somebody's top or something like that, so the rest of the people wouldn't see it. I remember telling him like, "Hey, this guy ain't gonna make it. Like, he's bad off. He was an elderly man, and I could tell like he was fading." And I was like, "Dude, we gotta get him some water or something." And he said, "Peanut, this is all we got." There's like 10 of us on the truck. We had one little case of water. He's like, "We hand one out, that's it for us. We don't have any water, and we don't even know when we're gonna get some more." So I understood, you had to make a decision. You had to look out for his soldiers that he had. If we go down and we can't take care of anybody else, can't do our mission.
yeah, but it's a hard decision to make.
It was, absolutely. And I remember by the time we got to the drop zone, he had passed, and we had to unload him off the truck and set him on the ground. And that probably happened, I don't know, I don't have a count on it, but many, many times over the next week for sure, maybe next couple of weeks, however long we did rescue missions for. Uh, We had several people die on the truck, and we just have to unload them when we get there. We had a pregnant woman get on the truck with us. We load her into the truck, and when we got to the convention center, at one point, that was our drop zone. We literally helped her off the truck, got her on the ground. She laid on the sidewalk, started having her baby. And
Oh, wow.
luckily, there were some doctors around, so they ran up and started taking control of the situation. I kind of looked at the guys around us. I was like, "All right, guys, load up. Let's get on the truck. Let's get out of here." It was something. I was like, "They got it from here."
Yeah,
But that whole situation, man, it was just chaos. Like I never imagined in my life to be in anything that serious. Or the whole city looked like what I expected apocalyptic times to look like, or if I hadn't been on any deployments by that time. So
Yeah.
the whole city at night, I remember one point in time we've been running and doing rescue missions the entire day. We cross over the Mississippi Bridge that night, and I look out across the city, and there's fires everywhere. Like you could just see big fires and smokes, smoke rolling up into the sky. The whole city was out of power. There was just destruction as far as you could see. We go into these neighborhoods. There were gas lines that had exploded, so the road was buckled. You go down a little bit further, and you could hear the air, hissing, and you'd see water shooting up about 50 feet in the air. And somebody's like, "What is that?" I was like, "Freaking gas line blew up, so it's shooting water clean up 50 feet in the air." And it was blowing out like that for days. I mean, it's not like they could come and shut off a valve and cut off the gas
Yeah.
line. It was just something it really makes you think about, everybody talks about the apocalypse. When people start panicking, when people start running out of food, start running out of water, it gets bad real quick. I mean, we'd go down these neighborhoods. I remember Chef Ventura Highway was one of the worst parts of the city that I saw. It was all bad, but I knew that area because my brother lived in New Orleans. He was in a home. He was mentally disabled and physically disabled. So we went and down that road. We'd went visit him and go to the home, pick him up, take him out into town, and kind of visit with him for the weekend or something. And I knew that area. We went down that road. That was one of the places where the gas line had buckled the road. It was shooting up in the neighborhood. They had bodies on the sides of the road. We had all the little side streets. People would come running up to the road because we'd go to the back of the neighborhood or where we started in the back of the neighborhood and start trying to rescue people and bring them out. And people would run up to the road and flag us down, and we'd stop and they'd be like, "Hey, can y'all come check on us and this and that?" And we're like, "Well, we got this mission that we're running right now, but we'll get to you guys as soon as we can." And finally, after about the second or third time, finally we stopped and went check out one of them. They had their mother had passed away during the hurricane. And so they had her outside on a table. I mean, it's not like anybody could come to the city and pick these people up and bring them to a morgue or nothing. The whole city was down. They had her on the table. They had a barbecue pit going, cooking so they could, at least feed each other and this and that. And they were just walking up to her and toasting a beer. "This is for mom," and this and that. And it was just kind of blew your mind. But what could they do? They were making the best of the situation they had.
Yeah.
And they were just waiting on, we'll figure it out when I guess the city's up and running again. But things like that became the normal out there very quick because there was no support in it. There wasn't any there wasn't anybody coming to save the day. There was nothing they could do. Um, you just had people devastated. They didn't have houses to live in anymore. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have food. They didn't have grocery stores to go to. We always say in the country out here, something like that ever happens, we go into the woods, we're gonna kill some deer and different things like that. We'll make it. We'll have food. Well, you think about New Orleans and a lot of it's all oriented on the city,
Yeah.
So, dude, as soon as everything went down, like, they were screwed really quick. They had the food that they had in their pantries, and that was it. So, we seen a lot of riots. We seen people robbing people. We had gang members pulling guns on us, trying to tell us, "Y'all gonna pick us up now and bring us here," and, I mean, first time I ever thought I was gonna have to shoot somebody was one of those missions where we parked down by the water, and they had a bunch of people coming out of the water, and, I don't know. They were already on edge, they were not in the right mindset. One of the guys was coming out the water, and someone started yelling and screaming at him, telling him, "Leave your stuff behind. You can't bring it with you." And we knew they couldn't bring it with them, but we weren't telling anybody to leave anything behind. But somebody got in their head. They were going to holler and scream at him. So guy was already irritated. He was getting yelled at. So he starts reaching for his waistband, and he was going for a gun. Um,
Oh.
I would post up in between the cab of the MTV and the back awning where we would load everyone up. We didn't have turrets back then, we were just National Guard, and these were stateside vehicles. So I'd kinda post up in between, and I'd watch guard because by that point, people were getting shot at all through the city. You had, air guard that were doing flight missions and helicopters getting shot at. So I just kinda scan around and make sure as we're loading the trucks up, everybody's good, and I remember drawing down on the guy, I start yelling at him. like stop and everything. And then I'm a 23-year-old kid thinking I'm about to have to kill this guy. And we went back and forth yelling. He was yelling back at me, and he was still, grabbing for his pistol and everything. And finally, someone calmed him down enough, and he stopped, and he kind of resituated himself, and then I kind of calmed down. Obviously, I didn't want to shoot the guy, especially one of our own people. But that was the first time for me where it ever got that real, and I was like, things can get that serious that quick. And it wasn't even a damn deployment. This was just us trying to do rescue missions. We were trying to help people.
Yeah. But I
So
mean, when the city collapsed, it was chaos,
it was
survival,
absolutely
especially in a city like that that's basically fallen, has survival gets ugly.
right.
It's really ugly quick.
It does, man. Like I said, you look out across the city on top of the bridge. You were kind of above. You had everything. You had a good high standpoint to look down across the city, and when you would see fire just across everything in the city was burning down. We remember going down Canal Street during the day one time, and the water had risen. It was probably waist deep, and both sides of the street have all these shops and everything, and you just see people busting windows on both sides. There's thousands of people out there, and you see them just pulling stuff out of the stores, and they're just running or floating stuff through the streets, and it's just chaos. There's just people breaking and stealing, and it was something that it looked like something you'd see on TV. It was so surreal. You were like, I couldn't ever imagine that it would be like this, but I don't know, when people don't have anything to survive on, it changes everything. Um, we did rescue missions as long as we could. Finally, luckily, I guess the water receded enough where rest of the guard and everything started coming back into the city, and that, support started coming back in. But there were nights, man, we'd run missions till we just couldn't go anymore, and we'd be working with NOPD, and they'd say, "All right, just you got your sleeping bags with you, set up right here." I remember one night we slept on the streets in Algiers. Algiers is like one of the murder capitals, I think, of New Orleans at the time. I'm like, I guess.
Yeah, y'all were doing kind of like we were doing on OIF-1
Right.
in Baghdad.
Yeah. I think I heard some of that on your
Yeah,
other
using
podcast.
using a broken chunk of concrete as a pillow.
Yeah. We literally laid out on the street, man, and just kinda got some sleep. I mean, we were exhausted. We'd go for days on end without sleeping, no shower. I don't think I showered for like a week or 2 before we finally got somewhere with some fresh water. Uh, but with the bad comes the good, we were seeing horrible things. We were seeing things we never expected to see in our lifetime, especially in country, over here at home. Not being in a Middle Eastern country at war or anything, but on the same token, we had so many people that were thankful. We'd have people get on the trucks and tell us, "Thank y'all so much, y'all are angels," and this and that. And I was like, "No, man, we're just doing our job. But God bless y'all." And we are doing the best we could. We didn't have we didn't have support. We didn't have supplies. We didn't have anything. But somehow or another, we just kept going, and good Lord was watching over us. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. There's so many situations we got into. I could sit here and tell you stories about Katrina till the sun comes up in the morning, and I'll still have 100 more to tell you after that.
Now, after that kinda the water receded, everything settled out, did you stay and, like some of the other Guard members, and,
Yeah,
uh, supplement the NOPD
yeah. So,
patrolling?
so I stayed, I think 4.5, 5 months. I stayed out there from, like I said, I rode the hurricane out I stayed there and rode the hurricane out. So from that point forward, I stayed there about another 4 or 5 months, and our mission went from rescue missions to, I'll never forget, one of the coolest things, man. We'd been, just living by the seat of our pants for weeks, or at least a week. I don't know what the timeline is. Every day kind of ran into each other out there. But one of the coolest things when people started coming into the city, man, we come across this street, and I see these military trucks coming, some old deuce and a halves and MTVs and everything. And I see the bumper number said B such and such on it. And that was us, Bravo Company, or like all of us always called it, B Company. And I see Joey T sitting on top of the dump truck, I see your brother James, I see Ron and all them, standing up, posted up on the sides of the trucks and walking in. They're coming into the city, and I'm like, hell yeah, man, our guys are here. And we start hollering back and forth to each other. And we were passing through, we are on a mission, we are going to take care of some stuff. But I seen all those guys come in, and I'm like, hell yeah, man, our people are here. We're good now. I was like, I ain't scared of shit anymore. I don't care. I know we're going to have supplies, but I also know if we get into some shit, we got backup now because, I grew up with all y'all guys.
Yeah.
And just like out here, normal day to day stuff are going to be dumbasses on the weekend on the party and all that. I knew if we got into something, those guys had my back. And that was one of the most relieving moments, I think, after the initial everything was going on and the chaos I had been seeing and all the unexpected things I had been involved in at that point. I seen James and them come in and Ron, and I was like, hell yeah, our people are here. We're good. We're good. We're good. We got backup. So eventually it shifted over to, I think we were still continuing on doing some rescue missions at that point, and it became cleanup. So us being engineers, we had all the equipment. Um, we finally got resituated. I want to say they put us at the Lario Center or Alero Center, however you pronounce it. And at that point, they had, I don't know how many units were there from all over the country. As far out as you could see in the parking lot, there were just motor pool after motor pool, thousands and thousands of military vehicles and everything. So from there, we started going into cleanup missions. We were clearing roads and moving vehicles. Like all the pictures you see where there's just cars. Once the water came up and it dropped back down, they had cars piled up on fences and right on the lakefront where and I guess, where all the boats and stuff were, they'd push boats in inland probably a mile or two. There are airplanes right there pushed in, and we were going through the city just clearing out streets. At one point in time, they gave us a front end loader and some skid steers and a few other things. They're like, just go down the street and push stuff out the way, make it passable for personnel to come in and start cleaning up. So we're going down the street and just picking up cars and moving them to the side, and it became cleanup. So we did that for a while, and once the city kinda started getting back on its feet, eventually it came to supporting NOPD and all that. Once they started having the rest of the civilian community come back in, yeah, it became us patrolling the city and working with NOPD. They would get calls. They would call us out to support them. Like, I remember one of the first calls I got, and I hadn't done any police work, brother and all them had been involved in all that for a while, but we got called out to one of our first calls when we were patrolling the city, and it was, NOPD called us. We get there, and it was a drug deal that went bad, and the guy got shot up. And so, literally, we get out there, and they're like, set up a perimeter, keep the people back so the investigators can do their investigation. So, you go walk across to the other side, and we start setting up a perimeter and all that. I look over, and this guy's just shot up, hanging off the car, and just laid over. It was a murder investigation. So that continued on, just different scenarios like that. That place was like the Wild West for a long time.
Yeah, after the major part of the hurricane,
Right.
it the chaos still continued in some form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a lot less than before. In the middle of all the rescue missions, I mean, there were times where we went through different projects and stuff, and you still had 2 or 3 feet of water in the project, so we were able to go through with our trucks. We roll up on one of them, and they're having a shootout. There's like a bunch of Fed vehicles parked all around and having a shootout. And we asked the guy that was in the truck with us, the NOPD officer, we're like, what the hell's going on here? Who's having a shootout with the FBI and everything? He's like, well, they had a lot of drug houses. So thing is, they would stash everything in these drug houses. And when everybody was supposed to evacuate, these guys weren't going to evacuate because they'd probably get killed if their drugs got stolen. So they set up shop in this house somehow or another. They must have had an altercation or something. Police got wind of it, and they go out there, and they start having a firefight with the FBI. So we're kinda just sitting back watching this firefight go on. Big prison out there. We remember backing down this bridge to the edge of the water, and the prison had been taken hostage by the prisoners that were trapped in there, and some of them were drowning. So I don't know if they had them stuck in the cells or whatever, but I know they were stuck in the jail and they wanted to get out. And what the SWAT team went in to do was to get the workers out of there first and foremost, because obviously they were going to try to take them hostage. So I remember hearing them go in and start popping off some gunshots, and next thing you know, they start coming out with the correctional officers, and
Wow.
I mean, all these different crazy things that we were going through. It was on such a higher level of what I was expecting to have to go out there and face. I thought we were going to go out there and help some people and just rescue them out of the water, but it turned into such a bigger animal than what I thought it was going to be. And needless to say, by the time we started supporting NOPD in the end, it was just basically trying to get a structure back going in the city and get some law back going, and so we would get calls. I mean, we'd assist NOPD. A lot of times it was just simple things, but sometimes you get called to a murder scene and have to pull a perimeter, or sometimes you pull up maybe having a shootout, or just different things. Eventually it went on from supporting NOPD to they started Gator Task Force towards the end. Right around there is when they started sending the guard back home, and they had their task force through the guard. It was mostly MPs and different things like that. They kind of set up, and it went on from there. I think that lasted quite a while. I mean, James worked it forever.
Now, I know Hurricane Rita hit
Yeah.
farther west. Did you go? Were you some of the with the guys that went out there for the Rita recovery?
Yeah, they kinda moved us around. I actually forgot about that,
Because I heard that Rita, the recovery from rescuing from and recovery from Hurricane Rita was a totally different
absolutely, man.
scenario, but because it wasn't
Personally,
in the major city and
right.
more in Cajun country.
Yeah, absolutely. We got sent to Abbeville, and, you know, we had came out of, like, the firefights and everything and all the chaos, and people just robbing every store they could see, and we got sent to Abbeville, and, once we went out and started trying to help the people out that we could there, they'd set us up on different checkpoints. We'd stay there all day. We'd have different people in the community would stop and say, "Hey, we're going into town to get some groceries and everything. You guys hungry? You need anything?" And we'd have people roll up to us and be like, "Why do y'all have guns on y'all?" We're just sitting there at this one checkpoint all day long. We pull shifts,
Yeah.
and they'd ask us questions like that. "Well, what do y'all need the guns for?" And we're like, "Well, we just came from New Orleans and it was a little rough over there." And they're like, "Okay, we get that." But yeah, I mean, we didn't have any of the chaos or the same things. There was definitely the town took a hit and it was destruction everywhere. I mean, a lot of the same things we seen from the storm surge where houses had been lifted off the blocks, and used to be a house right there, it's a big concrete pad, and you'd look probably a mile or two into the field and there was a house way down there, like it just took it and floated it off. But yeah, the tempo was way different. Treatment was a lot different. Not that we didn't have good treatment in New Orleans from some of the people, but you could tell that there are a lot of people up to no good in New Orleans.
Yeah.
In the country, it was more what we were used to. Country, everybody helps each other out, whether they know you or not. And eventually, after being there for a little while, they lost electricity and everything, but they still had in town. After a few days, they got stuff going again. So I've had people stop and say, "Hey, do I have any food and everything?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got MREs. We're good to go." And sure, you want us to pick you anything up in town? I'd be like, "No, we're good. We're good." Sure enough, they'd come back about an hour later and hand us bags of McDonald's food and everything, and would refuse to take anything from us.
Yeah.
I mean, we had people stop and pray with us, and say, just pray over protection over y'all, and thank you for what you're doing. So that was nice. It was kind of a change of pace for us.
Well, it was kind of the historic Cajun
Right.
hurricane response.
Yeah. I
The whole
mean,
community comes together to get everything back together.
good old Cajun hospitality, man. I mean, take care of your neighbor, do for others, and everybody helping each other out. So there's definitely a change of pace. Eventually, we went back to New Orleans, and I think that's when we were starting up the cleanup after that, which that went on for quite a few weeks. And then eventually, working with law enforcement, trying to get authority back going in the town. But Katrina was a mess. Um,
Well, I mean, we kind of see that like the same time when I was in OIF 3.
yeah,
Because I mean, yeah, you'd have like some of the smaller towns we dealt in, Alamori, some of the areas out in the country. You didn't let your guard down.
well,
You never let your guard down. You pulled security, but you weren't getting hit as hard as when you're on route predators.
right. You could tell it was eased up a little bit.
Yeah, route predators, any second something's going to blow up.
Right.
But when you know you're on the outskirts of Alamori out in the country doing night patrols and you could smell the wild jasmine
Yeah.
drifting through the air, and it's like, okay, I know the chances of their EFP or IED isn't going to be right here on the road because there's nothing here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I experienced a lot with the IEDs and everything on my first deployment when I went with the MPs. So I go out there as a commo guy, and that's what I've trained for many years in the guard. Doing radios and stuff. Well, I get out there to Al Assad. That was like kind of like our central hub, and as soon as I get out there, like, "Who's the commo guy?" And I come running up, and they're like, "All right, you're in charge of radios, you're in charge of Blue Force Tracker, you're in charge of counter IED, you're in charge of this." And I was like, "What the hell? I don't even know what half of this is." So I had to play catch up. We had some guys left seat, right seat with us for about 2 weeks, and they kind of got me up to speed as best as I could. But we kind of all sat around at Al Assad for the first week or two, getting acclimated and doing a little bit of training. But everyone started pushing out to the different fobs, and we had fobs from the Syrian border all the way to basically Baghdad. Baghdad was our headquarters. That's where our battalion and all that was. So I remember hearing you talking about on your last podcast about being around Baghdad, pushing into Baghdad, and everything.
Yeah, we were on the spearhead.
Right. So when we got there, we were doing convoys. I didn't do as many as a lot of other people out there. I was kind of tied, which really kind of pissed me off a lot. But I had a job to do, so I did my job. But I was kind of tied to headquarters.
Yeah.
I wanted to be out at the platoons, at the FOBs, and this and that. Their mission was to train Iraqi police. So they had all these districts they were working and training Iraqi police stations in each district. And I remember talking to James several times. They were on the Syrian border getting shot at every night. Just see tracers go by, and it's kind of like a normal thing to them. Um, but I would get reports every day, being I was the counter ID guy, all these routes that we would take to go on these convoys. Because I didn't get to get out as much as I wanted to, but I would have to go out to different fobs and check on their comms equipment, check on their antennas. So when I would get to go out, I was getting all these reports to look at, and it was all the routes we were taking of IED hits that day or that week, and you'd see all the equipment destroyed. You'd see blood all in the vehicles. You'd see like the real impact that they were having. I mean, back then IEDs were the number one tool that they were using, and it was working
Yeah.
because it was a mental thing. I remember my first convoy ever going out. This was my first deployment. First convoy I ever went out on was the 4th of July, Independence Day. And it was my first time leaving off the wire. I was excited about that because I didn't want to be, referred to as a little pogue bitch and all that. I wanted to go out there and do my thing, man. That's what I deployed for. And so we get out there and it really started setting in. I'm like, I've been seeing these reports every day, and it's active out here. It's not just, routes we were using and taking. We're getting hit with IEDs every day. I was scared to death. I was like, if we hit and stopping the whole convoy every time, you'd never make it from point A to point B. So a lot of times you just had to roll through, call out what you could, Mike to talk to the rest of the vehicles in the convoy, or call back to battalion or whatever. They'd cut the music off. So in the truck, somebody would be like, "Hey, play this song, man," and we'd play different, just kind of make the best of it. And you're like, "Fuck it, if it happens, it happens. This is just part of it." And if something like that happens, we'll deal with ordered. We get stuck there sometimes. I remember we go to Afghanistan, box just about every day.
Yeah.
A lot of times it was far away, far off from, where you were living at, but sometimes we hated back then. The bases were more comfortable back then. It was way after y'all. When y'all went through, y'all didn't have anything. Y'all were kind of like us in Katrina. Y'all were just figuring it out and living the best you could off of what you had. By the time we got to Bagram on my last deployment, my 3rd deployment, that was 2018. You got coffee shops on base and everything else. You start hearing mortars go off at like 5 in the morning. And I think it'd be like 3 mortars would hit, and then finally you'd hear the alarms go off, "Incoming, incoming." You're like, "Well, y'all are a little fucking late." I remember and I finally remembered I realized how desensitized I was to it, and I still feel bad about it. They had this little young guy, it was his first deployment, and I don't know if we'd been in Afghanistan for a few months and we're on our way back to Kuwait, or if we're on our way out. I think we're on our way back, and he was a younger guy, it was his first deployment, and we're sitting in the room and, mortars start hitting. We're in a big metal building, so I was just like, "Whatever, I'm fucking tired, I'm not running outside to the bunkers." And he starts freaking out, he's on the bunk on the side of me, he's like, "Sorry, what's going on? What's going on?" I'm like, "We're getting mortared." He's like, "What do I do? What I do?" And he starts asking me all these questions, and the more questions he would ask me, the more annoyed I would get. I was like, "Dude, you got 2 fucking options." I was like, "Put your vest on and run out to the bunker, or stop asking me questions and go to sleep. I'm trying to sleep."
That's
I'm like, "If it's my time, it's gonna hit the building, I'll be done. If
kinda
not."
how I was the
Yeah.
second tour.
After a while, you kinda like you get used to it, it's nothing. But you don't understand or you don't realize how weird that sounds when you start explaining it to somebody else. They're
Yep.
like, "Are you insane?" And I'm like, "No, I guess I was just burnt out, or I was used to it."
Yeah, it's like you hear the impacts and it's like, "Okay, got all my fingers, my toes,
Yeah.
hit the radio. Hey, you guys are good?
Yeah.
You good? Where y'all at?" "We're all hunkered down in the bunker," like all the privates be in the bunker.
Yeah.
It's like, "Well, y'all can go back to bed now. It's done. QRF's already out the gate and they've got the position dialed in. Nothing more is coming."
Yeah. That's, I mean, at that point, I was 18 years in, 3rd deployment. I was kinda like the old honorary sergeant, don't go fuck with him. You know, "Hey, let's go run in the bunker, just leave him be, he's good." But, I don't know, I got back from that deployment, and that's what it was, about 20 years into it, I was starting to get burnt out, you know? My son, I told you, my first deployment, he was a year and a half. By that 3rd deployment, that was 3 different years of his life I had missed out on.
Yeah.
My kids were starting to miss out a lot. I'd been on multiple deployments. My body by then it had taken on the impact of 20 years of service, so that's when I began, my medical retirement is what I started putting in for, and part of that was going to the VA and going to these appointments, and it's a brutal process because listen, you never question anything, and you're tearing your body to pieces the whole time along the way, and you just keep pushing forward. That's what's driven into our heads,
Yeah.
Don't say anything, drive on.
Suck it up and drive on.
Charlie Mike, continue mission. And so that's what we always did, but I really didn't realize it at first. But then the mental side of it, PTSD, I didn't think I had it. And it really started kicking in. I was having a lot of problems with rage and outbursts, getting angry and getting frustrated a lot more than anyone normally would. A lot of road rage. You used to driving convoys in Iraq, and they're like, people are going to try to intermingle into the convoy. Do not let them. Ram them if you got
Yeah.
to.
You always have the right of way.
Right. Well, it's kind of hard when you get back home and you're used to that mentality, and then you're stuck in a traffic jam, just cars forever. You got someone cut you off in the middle of the road. I remember I finally realized how bad it was. I started dealing with different things.
Mike.
I started dealing with different things of anger and stuff like that, and I kind of knew something was up. I wasn't right, or I wasn't reacting the way that I should, or like normal people do. So I had started going to see somebody at the VA. Started seeing a psychiatrist for PTSD, and she started giving me these techniques and different things. And I went through about two psychiatrists. I felt so uncomfortable the whole time. It just didn't work out. And I gave it a shot, man, about 6 months. And finally, I went in one day and I was like, this is my last time coming here. And he's like, what's wrong? And I was fired up. Got to the parking lot, couldn't find a parking spot. Found a parking spot. It was in a mud hole. My truck slid over, and like I could not get out of my driver's door because it slid right next to another vehicle. I had to climb out through the passenger side. So I walk in there. I'm already agitated, kind of go off on him. And I'm like, dude, it's like this. I can go to the camp with my buddies and I can sit around a campfire and vent to them and get more off my chest with them in one weekend around a campfire than I can coming over you that I don't even know you, talking to you for a year. I was like, this ain't working. I'm done. So I quit going. Well, a little time had passed, and I went back, and I had some other issues going on. So I said, let me go try an DA, and I don't know. She felt like family right off the bat. I was able to start talking to her about different things, tell her the issues I was dealing with, and she started giving me different techniques, and I could start seeing progress. I started seeing different things that were helping out. Well, one morning I was on my way to work, and passing through the neighborhood, this guy pulls out about 20 feet away from me as I'm driving down the road. Pulls out in front of me, I have to mash my brakes and everything, and immediately I get a little upset, but I'm not there yet. I'm good. Well, then he starts trying to brake check me. So I'm getting very annoyed at this point. I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go around him. So I swing around him, and as I go around him, he starts speeding up and he's trying to run me off the road, like he's swerving at me. I'm pissed at this point. My blood is boiling. Get to the stop sign, he runs up behind me and just mashes and lays on his horns. I'm like, whatever. I leave from the stop sign, I go to the expressway to get on to come to work. And I'm like, I remember saying in my head, I'm like, please God, don't let there be any traffic coming. Just let me be able to kind of get to the stop sign, roll out, and just get away from the situation because I feel myself going there. And sure enough, I get a stop sign, horn again. And sure enough, dude, he came up behind me and he laid on the horn. And before I knew it, I gave him as many choice words as I could think of, and I was still so angry. And finally, just something clicked in my head, and I was like, nowadays everybody's got dash cams and all this, and I was like, I could see the headlines. Just it all of a sudden it popped into my head. I was like, soldier loses his mind, and they got me on camera just coming at this guy, yelling and screaming and threatening him and all this. And while it was provoked, I knew how that story was going to go.
Yeah.
So I got out of there and I went back to work. And I remember, man, it took me. I was out of the situation. It was done. Got to work. Went inside the shop, got in my stall, and for 3 hours I was fuming mad. Like, I could not calm myself down. I was just as angry as when I was sitting in his car screaming at him 3 hours later, pacing the floors, like, could not come down off of it. And, so I remember the next day I had an appointment. I went to talk with my psychiatrist, and I spoke with her about it all, and luckily I had calmed down by then. I started explaining to her, and we had such a connection with each other by then, and such a rapport going, and she knew all the different things that I had been through and what I was dealing with. And I'll never forget. She told me, she said, "I'm proud of you." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I almost like did some pretty serious stuff here. I mean, I'd have been in jail and everything. And she's like, "Well, I get all that, and I'm not saying that's not wrong." But she's like, "You didn't do what you wanted to do," and I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I didn't think of it that way. And she's like, "You wanted to, but you were able to some finally got to a point where you're able to calm yourself down and get yourself out of the situation." And up until that point, I hadn't really believed too much in the whole process of dealing with mental health, dealing with PTSD. I was going through the motions just because it's what everyone else was telling me. You need to do this. We notice a lot of changes in you. We notice that you're real angry, and I think finally at that point it really started registering to me how serious, number one, that the situation had gotten. All these years I went along thinking, well, I've been through all this and I've seen all of that, but that was just what the situation was. No big deal. I seen it. I was there, but it didn't affect me. But here I am, 15, 20 years later, and it was definitely affected me. I was short with my family, short with my kids. There were times I'd just kind of start yelling at them if they did something. And, it probably wasn't warranted for me to get that angry with them. But luckily, I'd already started this process. Go and talk to somebody, and like I said, it was at that point, I think, right when I finally started understanding it. Thank God I had been going to see her, and she
Yeah.
she had been giving me some techniques to do and try to catch myself and wheel myself back in, because if she hadn't, I would have pulled that guy out of his car that day. Like I said, it was as men, we still know that there's things you can do and there's things that you shouldn't do. You know, there's a difference between being on a battlefield somewhere or somebody pointing a gun at you and being in. We all got thoughts of what we want to do sometimes, or I love to beat the crap out of this guy or something like that. We all know too, in a normal society, we're not supposed to act that way.
Yeah.
When it started becoming apparent to me, and by that point, I had many, many colleagues that were going through PTSD and dealing with different scenarios, but mental health started really becoming a real thing for me, a real thing for the people around me. Over the years, I can't tell you, there's countless guys I know that don't just work that way. I lost many, many friends along the years in the guard to suicide. Um, Seen many friends, get in all kinds of trouble with the law, go to jail. I've seen guys try to drown it out with alcohol and lost plenty of friends, car wrecks,
Yeah.
just different things, and it's all veterans trying to figure out how to deal with themselves. So I may not be one of the biggest advocates they have for mental health or anything like that, but I can definitely tell you from experience, it's a real thing. And you can try and fight with it all you want and deal with it yourself. But at the end of the day, there's so many resources out there, it never hurts to go give it a try. Because a lot of times you going to deal with that and deal with a doctor and them not only teaching you techniques, you'll also get some other guys that'll open up to you and say, "Hey, how's that working for you?" And they'll start being curious about it. And you might not even know they're dealing with a lot of the same stuff. So,
And even that, people will notice the changes in you once you start using the
right.
techniques. I need to go look at this.
Right, exactly. And I
It's
mean,
kind of the same thing as basic training. The peer pressure pushes you to.
yeah, they claim, there's no stigma behind it and this and that, and everyone should go and just be open. But you and I both know that's not how the world works. If you do go and get help, a lot of times, if you got the wrong leadership, in place, there'll be ways where you will kind of get looked at differently sometimes. So even if you're not in that situation, we're all drilled into our heads. Don't cry about it. Don't talk about it. Be tough. Do what you got to do. Continue mission. And that's what we tell ourselves. But
Yeah.
at some point, you got to realize, I mean, if you got issues going on that you can't control, you got to get the help because this is before, if you're not right, how are you going to help someone else?
Yep.
That's what I learned from it all.
And we literally have to be our brother's keepers. Ask anyone that serves
Right.
in some form or the other, nurses, whatever. I mean, it's all stressful situations where you're seeing all of them get to see the horrors
Right.
of
And
humanity that normal people that don't serve in that capacity experience. And it's hard for them to understand.
yeah. And I mean, that's something that's kind of bothered me too before. Everybody thinks of PTSD is just soldiers, soldiers, soldiers. You got these policemen and everything that put their lives on the line day after day after day, not just for a year long for a deployment or a couple of years, like however long they work on that police
Yeah, a
force.
career.
They're dealing with the worst situations, like things that I thought were the worst things that's ever happened in my life on Katrina. These guys deal with that every day. You have these paramedics that see the worst of the worst of the worst. All these different, it's not just police. I mean, it's not just military. I mean, it's
Nurses and
nurses and doctors
aides, orderlies that work in emergency rooms. They get it.
going off on them and trying to attack them. PT,
No, you look at how Vietnam veterans were treated.
yeah,
Like they drank themselves to death.
right. They want their fellow soldiers that they had deployed with. So, but look after your friends, look after your brothers and your sisters too. If there's something going on, and try to guide them towards those resources. Without a doubt, I've seen it save many people's lives. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't let someone talk me into going and start talking with them because here I don't want to do that. It's definitely uncomfortable if it's something we're not used to doing. I mean, we were raised that way. You just deal with your own stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just, the veterans resources. There's all.
Yeah. I mean, for me, um, I've come a long way and I feel like I'm in a good place now. I mean, I've got chronic PTSD, so it's probably nothing I'll ever get rid of. Well, it's called chronic, but anxiety or whatever issues I got going on. But This last year, I really dug in on the spiritual side, kind of explore that aspect of life, and the more that I try and get closer, that it's helping me a lot more with anxiety and different things also. So never forget the spiritual side of it. Look for the resources. Talk to your friends. Talk to your buddies. I mean, if you're dealing with some stuff, it's not going to get better on its own. You got to make that step. If you've got a family that depends on you, you've got kids that depend on you, you've got a mama and a daddy that depends on you. You can't do anything for them if you're not willing to fix yourself. And you can't just drive through. You can't just drive on. I mean, sometimes you got to stop and you got to take a knee and you got to do what you got to do.
The way, and
But
that's what the Eucharist means, Thanksgiving.
yeah, and you look, you back on it. You back
And
into it.
get this podcast started and get it rolling.
I didn't know that, man.
Yeah, it's helped it's helped me a lot. And
And that was life changing for me. Effort, but I still wasn't working as hard as I could. Um, but after I went to that Acts retreat, I PTSD and everything. Like since I've started reaching out to God and trying to build a relationship with Him and trying to read the Bible more, I'm still struggling with that, and I need to just get down. If you want to build a relationship with God, you got to read the Bible. So I'm struggling with that, but I'm going to work on it a lot harder. But that's me reaching out. And the more that I do that, the better I feel, the more in control I feel like he is, which in turn gives me more control because I know if he's God in my way, then I'm on the right path. So those things definitely impact your life positively.
yeah, like what I talk about in my episode, what led me to the military was I was completely away from the church. I mean, I believed in God, but I was just doing my own thing,
Yeah.
and it was leading me down dark paths. Going in the military and going to war was my way out. And I think on my first tour, there was a Paul Oakenfold song that came out. Like, and I remember buying the EP. We were starting to come back. I think we were at Doha. I bought the CD. It was Paul Oakenfold. It was Long Way Home. Taking my whole stint through the military and everything to today, I was taking the long way home back to church.
Right. That's the thing, man. Once you start searching for it, I mean, you hear people say, I've been having a calling from God and everything. And I feel like this past year, not just a calling, I feel like he's been screaming at me. I mean, I can feel it in my heart down to my bones. I can feel him pulling me that way. And I'm feeling like a burning desire to want to get close to him, to get into church and to do more and to I feel like if I do that, I can be a better person, I can be a better man, I can be a better husband, father, and that's what I want out of life. I tried doing it on my own all these years.
Same.
I have tried, and believe me, I failed every way that you can fail. There's plenty of people out there that have many stories about me that can tell you about how bad of a person I can be.
Same here.
But what I want to do and what I've been trying to do lately is make some different stories where people can tell you how good of a person I can be. I want my kids to say how good of a dad that I can be, or my wife to say how good of a husband I can be. So I'm working on it. I'm not perfect. I still make mistakes every day. Um, but I feel better making an effort. I feel better, reaching for it and trying to. It's a new goal for me to set. We've always got goals in the military. We've always got goals dealing with our missions or whatever. So this is just another more of the same for me, but it's more such, way more important in this point of my life to go after God and have a spiritual side, a spiritual goal.
And as leadership, you have to set your soldiers up for success.
Right. More to me than anything, what they always told us, lead by example.
Exactly.
Well, God calls you as the man of the house or the father of the house or the husband of the house to lead by example. It's not just he wants you to do this, like that is what you're appointed to do. It is your duty to number one, get close to God and try to live as righteously as you can. And in turn, if you do that, then you're leading by example and your family's going to follow suit. It took me a long time to understand that. And I wish that I could say that I've been doing that for the majority of my life, but I haven't. But, hey, I'm learning.
Because changing one part of that would make me a completely different person at this point.
Well, not only that, God calls on us to help other people out sometimes. And a lot of times, the trials that you went through help you relate to their situation to where you can actually talk to them the way that they need. Traumatic event that they're going through at the time. And how can you give them advice on it?
Yep.
So that's why they say, trials are a blessing, suffering is a blessing. We don't ever see it that way, but so.
Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up.
Wayne, I appreciate you having me out, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was super nervous coming out here. I didn't know what I was gonna talk about. I hope I did a good enough job for you guys, and
Well, like our whole goal with this is to help people that serve
yeah,
to show them that, hey, we're all dealing with it. These are our, and it might be, you might save one person's life.
yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
absolutely
If like I've told Danny and Mike, if one person doesn't, this podcast is a tremendous success.
well, I just want anybody who's out there listening that's dealing with, any type of thoughts of not being good enough or the world's better off without me or whatever, just know, it's not. God's got you here for a reason. There's always somebody that needs you. There's always a purpose for you. Reach out to someone. If you feel like there's no other way out, then reach out. I mean, there's resources and everything out there, but you are enough and you are valuable. You are important. Jesus died for all of us. He didn't just die for the important ones or I mean, he came for sinners and he came to help them all find the way. So never think you're not enough. You are.
And on that note, we'll go ahead and end this time and God bless.